Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I am so excited for you to hear from this guest. Last week, you guys had the pleasure of listening to Mary Rose, one of the dietitians on the Tips with Tony team. And today, you guys get to hear from Kasey. I'm so excited. Kasey, not only is she a registered dietitian, she also is a functional dietitian. So she's going to explain what those differences are and how she helps people throughout the Tips with Tony program and beyond. And I'm just so excited to have her here for you guys to get to know her on a more intimate level. You probably have heard her on earlier podcasts, but now it's just us one-on-one and we get to really go deeper into her specialty. So I'm so excited to have her here. So Kasey, welcome back to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Yay, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you. So the first question I always ask, and we've definitely shared that you've shared this before, but I want you to take it this time more along the lines of like your specialty with gut health. Because I know that for you being part of Tips with Tony, you also have a history of disordered eating and all of that. But I would really love to transition today's topic to highlighting all of the knowledge that you have behind functional nutrition. So I want you to introduce yourself with that in mind by sharing who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do.
All right, I love that. So I am Kasey Benavides. I'm one of the dietitians on the Tips with Tony team. And like Tony said, I am a functionally trained dietitian, which I think is such a buzzword right now. So I love to dive a little bit deeper about what that means. Essentially, the fact that I am functionally trained and take a functional approach to nutrition means I'm taking a root cause. So in conventional medicine and conventional nutrition, you might see symptoms and treat those symptoms. In a functional approach, you see those symptoms and your thought immediately goes, why are those symptoms there? Mm-hmm. And so you're really trying to get to the root cause of each individual's concerns while taking an individualized approach. And that means that maybe your preferred approach is what we take into consideration. Maybe you won't do a treatment that involves giving up dairy, which I'm all for. We work with your individual preferences, your body needs, and your end goals to come up with plans that are just completely personalized and completely for you. So that's a little bit about what I do. And my why is really just to help people. I have known since I was in high school, that was someone would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would always say, I don't know what I want to be, but I know I want to help people. And so that's why I, joined the Tips with Tony team, is because I think you guys know Tony. It's so clear that that's her mission as well. It's why I launched my practice. And that is why I take a functional approach, is because I truly believe that it is the most helpful way to solve your health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're so right in that so many people, I think, go first to like the fix it mode. And it's like you're trying to you're healing it, but you're not just putting a Band-Aid on it. You're really getting to uncovering, why is this happening? So I actually think a really great question to start is, of all of the people that you've helped and treated over the years in regards to functional nutrition, what has been the root cause? Like, are there any common things that pop up and then that they think it's this thing, but it's actually this thing? Like, I would be so curious, because I think so many people go to like, oh, my gut's a mess, let me just go gluten-free and dairy-free, and then I fixed it, quote unquote.
Totally.
I would just love to explore that a little bit more of like maybe some common root causes, what people think versus what they actually are.
That's such a good one. Okay, so I would say overarching, and there's a million different things that I could really say here, but overarching, I see two main issues that come up time and time again. The first is stress. We are so overstressed and under-rested. And even the things that we do to rest in today's world maybe aren't as restorative as we would really like to believe that they are. The Netflix binges, the crazy Peloton rides, even though those things get your mind right, they're maybe not restoring your physiology like we would want them to be. And so I see stress play such a huge role in a lot of inflammation related to gut health, kind of dysbiosis to gut health. Our body needs us to be pretty stressed. If we are living in a stress response, our sympathetic nervous system is activated. Counter to that sympathetic nervous system is our parasympathetic nervous system, which you might have heard called rest and digest. So if we're constantly stressing, we're not resting and digesting, which means if we're eating food in a stress state, our digestion is going to be messed up. So stress is a big common cause that I see. And of course, there's tons that we can do other than just meditation and yoga, although those things are fantastic.
Yeah.
We just got to handle our stress differently. And then the second is one that listeners of this podcast are going to relate to, because this is, Tony, I think really in line with your mission. Chronic dieting and chronic restriction, I see cause so many problems for women. And it's heartbreaking because essentially we've been lied to. Tony, I know you get this and you say this to people time and time again. If you are a woman who has grown up in the last 50 years, you have had external diet pressure telling you to eat less and exercise more and do more cardio. And I see so many women who develop thyroid issues, and then they come to me and they're frustrated and they're sad, and they all of a sudden have developed, weight loss resistance might not be the most popular term, but essentially that, where sure, we can say that thermodynamics are calories in versus calories out. But what happens when somebody is chronically under dieted is that calories in equation gets really complicated and we don't fully understand it. And so they restrict further and further without seeing that weight loss. And it can be really damning.
Yeah. And it's confusing, right? And then people become frustrated and it just leads to working harder instead of working smarter. And then putting a little bit more of a what's the word? Like a bigger stab, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, more stress, really.
Yeah, more stress.
Together.
Yeah. So, oh my God, that's so true. So the other reason where I really wanted to talk about today was where someone might be feeling all of these different things, different symptoms like fatigue, bloating, just like not well. And they probably have this history of like chronic dieting. But then, so now their mind immediately goes to supplements. And so I do believe there's a time and place for certain specific supplements, right? And before we even started recording, I was sharing with you, Kasey, that how I've had this podcast for a while now. And before this podcast, I was on another podcast. I've been a dietitian for now 8 years. So even my messaging around supplements has changed over the years as I've gotten more experience and knowledge and just gotten deeper into the field. And that's just normal. So I apologize already in advance if you're like, you used to hear me say things like you don't need any, to now where it's like a little bit nuanced, where I'm more like, okay, well, sometimes it is appropriate. I would love for you to kind of just share your expertise and your knowledge around supplements, of like when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and how can somebody know or tell?
Okay. First of all, I just have to say I love your response, because I think what not enough nutrition professionals do is take accountability and responsibility for when they learn more and change their stance. We should be celebrating the fact that what we used to say, we say something different because it means we've learned. I was right there with you, Tony. I went through a phase where I said nobody needed supplements. They just needed vegetables. And then there was the phase where I said everyone needed, just go get a multivitamin from the grocery store. I've said it all. And as we know better, we do better. And I think that actually, I think if more practitioners did what you just did, people would feel a little bit more like they could trust the nutrition world, because it is ever changing our knowledge. I mean,
and the science is always changing. There's so much about it that it's so, we learn and think, and food changes, and there's so many things that have changed as a result of many years ago.
I mean, you guys, when you look at the science behind it, and I won't get too technical here, but there are certain compounds and molecules that we didn't even discover until the early noughties. And so the fact that, if we didn't even discover them in research, of course, they're not going to come into public policy and even clinical recommendations. And so we have to always just, hold what we know with the realization that research is developing. And that's a beautiful thing. And we can embrace it without being scared of it. But to answer your question, that was just a really long way of giving you kudos.
Thank you.
To answer your question.
I can always depend on, if you guys listened to last week's episode with Mary Rose, I was not expecting to get a love bomb to my face, but I could always appreciate Kasey and Mary Rose being there for my support. They think that I have them on my team for me to have support. I don't know, the opposite, basically. But really, it's just like to support me. That's literally why I have it.
Well, it's a fun team to be a part of. We really are, I think, such a fun team. So to answer your question about supplements, everybody's least favorite thing that dietitians love to say, it depends. There are a few supplements that I have noticed are pretty across the board. Things like our minerals, so sodium, potassium, and magnesium. There are others, but those are the main three. I've noticed most of my clients are deficient. And so once they add them back in, they tend to see the changes. They see increased energy, better bowel movements, improved sleep, better muscle recovery. And so that is kind of an across the board. But everything else, you guys, it gets so personalized. And I think what might be more helpful here is to highlight maybe the complexity. So for example, I know a lot of women who are taking iron because they've been told they're anemic or they have heavy bleeds. And really that can end up doing more harm than good because they might end up constipated. Iron, if it's in the wrong place in our body, can actually be inflammatory. Think about how iron out in the environment can oxidize and rust. And so that's not to say iron is bad. If you're listening to this, you know iron is good and you know it's necessary. But what's important is that iron gets to the right place. So maybe if you have low iron, maybe you do need a supplement with iron. Or maybe you need to supplement with copper and vitamin A to make sure that your iron recycling system is where it should be and that iron is getting to the right place. So that's why it can't always be so simple. It's not always as simple as saying, I have low iron, I need iron. You might need copper, you might need zinc, or you might need vitamin A. Zinc is another one of those. Everybody's been taking zinc lately because of
their immune system.
Certain events in the world.
We can say it because we've had a virus that is, can either damage your immune system or put you at risk for a damaged immune system. So.
Exactly. So zinc has been the hot supplement, but zinc is another one of those. You guys, myself included, I just got blood work a couple weeks ago and my zinc was actually a little bit more elevated than I would like to see it, which can compete with copper and cause problems for iron recycling. So the body is just so complex. This is one example. Vitamin D could be another one. Everyone's supplementing with vitamin D, but did you know you need magnesium for vitamin D absorption to happen the way we want it to? So all of this is not to discourage you and make you doubt what you know, but it's to make you pause and make you assess. If you see that one really cool, clickable post, shareable post on Instagram, I just want you to take it in, learn from it. That's awesome. But then remind yourself, okay, there's a lot more to this story and supplementation is really personalized.
Yeah. And the other thing that as you were sharing, like what was sitting with me is more is not better. So zinc has a purpose temporarily, but like you said, if you overdo it, it could be affecting your body's always trying to balance you out. Always, right? So if you're doing one too much of one thing and not enough of the other, it can be problematic. It actually can do more harm than good. So that's where I think a lot of people where I've changed in my messaging is it's not no supplements. But if you're going to take a supplement, make sure you really need it and also make sure you understand why you're taking it and always ask for how long and how much. Because I think that is where it really can get quite complicated. And like you said, sometimes you also need, if you're going to take one, you might need another one. And that's where it's okay. But we don't want to be taking a bunch of so many things because they all do work either with or against each other. So sometimes it could be like so contradictory, you know what I mean? So that's why it really comes down to, it's don't just like take the supplement you find on the shelf. Like there are certain things, like I agree, magnesium, like there's certain things, but even like there's always something else, but like you have
there's always a disclaimer, a qualifier. I mean, even magnesium, there's 10 different types and some of those are just going to act as a laxative. So if you heard this podcast and then go to GNC to get magnesium,
Yes.
you might be off base.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I love what you said about kind of everybody loves to be so hard on the pharmaceutical industry and polypharm. And of course, there are dangers associated. But I love what you just said, Tony, because it's true that the wellness industry is kind of stepping into that space in a very similar way, especially, unfortunately, in the functional world. I see a lot of people that know that the word functional is in right now. And then they use that to market to people when it might be more dangerous. So if you are going from being on a ton of prescriptions to being on a ton of supplements, something is wrong. You shouldn't have to take 8 billion supplements to support your health. And that's where targeted, personalized supplementation comes in.
100%. And I have to I say it a lot, but I have to, if someone's new to this podcast, like how you just said, like functional nutrition is now super trendy. So now people are stepping into it using that verbiage, whether they have the credentials behind them or not to support it. It's like lifestyle change has become trendy. Yes. And it's like the marketing is all about a lifestyle change. And then the inside is a straight up restrictive diet. And I want to punch people.
It's so infuriating because then it makes, sometimes I'm like, oh, do I even want to say I'm functional? I'm sure you're the same way with lifestyle. And then it's just, but I've decided, no, I'm going to reclaim the word, just like you stand true to lifestyle change, because people need to see what healthy lifestyle change looks like. It's so important.
100%. So I actually want to step into that and more so regardless of whether you need a supplement or not, what are some of those things that we could be practicing and implementing in our daily life that will only support the supplement, or maybe you don't need one after you implement X, Y, or Z. You know what I mean? So I know you talk about so many great things like your circadian rhythm. I mean, like, I don't want to geek out too much and overwhelm, the listeners, but that's like anything. I just wrapped up the 5-day body confidence challenge. And I'm like, how am I going to talk for 1 full hour for 5 days in a row? And as I was talking, I'm like, there's so much here. I forget, we have so much. I forget of how long and how much
we have to reel ourselves in.
Yeah, literally. So all I have to say, guys, this is one 45-minute conversation where Kasey literally, how long did it take you to get your degree not in RD? For those who don't know, you got a master's in functional nutrition, right?
Right.
But before you answer that, just so you guys know, every registered dietitian has a minimum of 5 years under their belt of schooling. Okay. So we learn a lot. And now in addition to that, Kasey, you got your master's in functional nutrition. How long did that take you?
So my master's in functional nutrition took me 2 years from the University of Texas. And then even after I finished that, you guys, I graduated and I realized, whoa, I know so much about what's happening inside our body and physiology, but I didn't feel like I knew as much as I wanted to know about the clinical side of things. So I even invested in another 3-month course by another registered dietitian who kind of helps make the connection between physiology and clinical application. So even on top of having a master's degree in this, I needed some more support. And so if you're out there and you're like, well, I listen and I'm interested in nutrition, don't beat yourself up because my goodness, this stuff is complicated.
It's a lot. Yeah. So all that to say, we could spend hours talking about this, but very simply, I guess I would like for you to kind of talk about the lifestyle changes, the habits, the certain things that people can implement that's really going to move the needle in their overall wellness and where they might not necessarily need a supplement, or if they did, you know what I mean? Because I think what happens is now when people are all about, I need the supplement, they're thinking about the supplement, but they're neglecting the lifestyle change that actually needs to be your foundation. Otherwise, the supplement's only going to do so much.
Okay, I completely agree. I'm glad you asked this question. And it's fun for me because keep in mind that, through the Tips with Tony program, my focus is more on food freedom than functional nutrition. Mm-hmm. But what I have realized in working with clients through your program, Tony, is that they'll come to us at the beginning of their 6 months, and they maybe do have some functional concerns like gut health or hormonal issues. And we watch those resolve just by targeting lifestyles. And so functional testing, functional supplementation is all the rage and it's sexy right now, but I'm glad to point out some of the lifestyle things that are not as glamorous because they're equally as important. So first of all, anything you've heard on this podcast, anything that you're seeing on at Tips with Tony, those are all foundational to making changes. And so certain things like making sure you're eating 3 balanced meals, balancing your meals out with carbs, protein, and fat, making sure that you have a healthy relationship with food. you guys, if you're stressing about food, what was the number one cause that I said led to some of this stuff? It's stress. And so making sure that you address that, making sure you find a way to live in food freedom, but also combine gentle nutrition and common nutrition principles so that you are supporting your health. You mentioned circadian rhythms. Tony, that's a huge one. Sleep, you guys, sleep. It is not fun and it's hard. It took me years to get my sleep to where I wanted to be. And sometimes it really is annoying. Am I allowed to say that? I think that people think just because you and I are dietitians, we like love to eat our vegetables every day. And we're
human beings. Like if anything, I think it's more annoying for us because we know so much. I just sometimes I wish like I was ignorant to this stuff. Like I just like we want to stay up late. Trust me, we want to, right? But then we remember like, oh yeah, but we hate ourselves the next day. It's just like not worth it.
People seem to think that like the health issues in America are just due to a lack of education. I'm like, okay, I feel pretty dang educated about nutrition, and I still have days where I'm like, are you kidding? I'm not eating a vegetable. So it's not just education, y'all. Totally. But yeah, sleep is a big one. A couple months ago, I did an experiment it wasn't an experiment, actually. I just kind of stopped drinking for a couple of months. And I went out with my friends one night. So I ended up, probably got home at 2 or 2:30. And the next morning, I felt so hungover, even though I hadn't had a sip of alcohol. And it was because my sleep and my circadian rhythms had been, messed with. I was more anxious the next day, which I know you all know what I'm talking about, that post-drinking anxiety. Sometimes we dress it up as Sunday scaries, but we know what it really is. It's just really important to go to the basics, the things that you've been hearing. That's where research isn't going to change. There's never going to be a research study that comes out and says, guess what? We actually would do better with 3 hours of sleep, or we would actually do better if we didn't eat food. Those are the things that are going to stay consistent. And so focus on those. If anything that I've said before this felt really overwhelming to you, there is good news, because everything that you've seen, all of the basics, stick to those. They're not overwhelming. They're simple. You've heard them your whole life, and they can make a huge, if not the biggest, impact on your health.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's so helpful. Awesome. I asked Mary Rose this question, and you guys are both like, you love science and geeking out. And I love it so much, because I rather just like teach, and like I'm not like
you love the people.
I'm like the people. I want to connect. Like when it comes to the science, I read it because I need to like stay up to date on my knowledge. Like that's but you guys are like, I love it. That's why I have you guys here, because you guys take the parts of me that I'm not, that you, it's just so cool. Anyways, all that to say, is there anything right now that you're like geeking out about? Like, is there anything you're currently like researching or you're like obsessed with that you're just like, everybody needs to know this? Is there anything that you're like,
I love that you asked this, because you know me so well, because literally if you would have asked me 7 months ago, it would have been vitamin D. I was like majorly crushing on vitamin D. And before that, it was the liver. I was so obsessed with our liver detoxification. Right now, I would say my brain is kind of exploding, because I did recently launch my own functional practice, and I'm doing a lot of blood work with clients, and it's kind of all of it. I feel like for the first time. So when I started my nutrition journey, I was a junior in high school, and I wanted to know on a molecular level, what was the difference between how our body responded to organic produce versus non-organic produce.
Ooh.
And my teacher laughed at me. She was like, honey, you're in high school. You're not going to be able to do this. And I thought that was so rude. And then I went to go find the answers, and she was right. I had no idea. I couldn't even read the first page of any of the research that I found. And so then I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll learn this when I go to school and study nutrition. And I learned a lot. I'm so thankful for my undergrad, but I still couldn't answer that question. And then I thought, oh, okay, I'll learn this when I go to grad school. And I feel like for the first time, I'm at the end of the rope. For the first time, I'm like, actually, I don't have any further questions. I understand the molecular level of nutrition in a way that's exciting. And so seeing, 8 years of education come to fruition in my client cases has just been like the ultimate joy. And it's just, it really does make me geek out, because you see their blood work come in, you see their, stool test, whatever it might be. And, always keeping in mind where research, what we still don't know, which is a lot. But it's so fun to see the applications and see how it can affect and help people live better lives.
Yeah, it's the best. It's so cool. Okay, people are gonna want to know, why didn't you answer? Does our nutrition does our body respond to organic versus non-organic on a molecular level? So you have to answer, otherwise people are going to hate me and never will listen to Tips with Tony ever again.
This is such an unpopular opinion, and people are not going to like it. I'm sure you're going to get like hate mail. Why did you have on that person? You guys, the difference between organic and non-organic is not that different in our body. Mm-hmm. There are, if you are somebody that is up close with pesticides, spraying them in a field, yes. But by the time that the food gets to us, the pesticide residues are so low that for most people, it doesn't make a difference. I won't say everyone, because there are those with sensitivity.
Some have, I was going to say, some have like maybe sensitivities, like
chronic illnesses.
Yeah, it's different for sure.
100%. And again, this might be something that in 15 years we have more research on, but I can tell you that there are more pollutants in our environment in today's world than there were 50 years ago. I don't think that's shocking to anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't think that non-organic produce is the biggest source of them.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that I think people stress about. EWG is the database a lot of people go to get their, the dirty dozen, the infamous dirty dozen. And what EWG is actually testing for is they are testing for any amount of a certain list of produce, or a certain list of pesticides. But unfortunately, that certain list of pesticides does not include organic pesticides. And often in organic farming, you have to spray more frequently because those pesticides are less effective. So organic pesticides might actually end up in a higher amount of residue. Mm-hmm. And when we're looking at how our liver can detoxify and how our liver can get rid of these small amounts of pesticides, the dose is really important. Right? If we are looking at 0.1 parts per billion, girl, your liver's got you. Your liver is going to take care of that. I promise. But if you're looking at, 17 parts per billion, it might be, and these are just made up numbers, y'all. Please don't go and look at your thing. But here's the unfortunate thing. The EWG database doesn't even test for the amount of pesticides. It just tests for whether or not it's there. Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes I get angry, but it's fine because I'm fine. But then sometimes I have too much anger, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when you might want to get out of the way. So it's small amounts of disturbances are not as big of a deal as bigger ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for clarifying that, because I think I probably have mentioned it before, but I don't know if I've ever really explained it in that great detail. And I think we still need the reminder, because like you're saying, in our world today where we're exposed to lots of different pollutants, there's a lot of that stuff we can't control. The only thing we can control is how we take care of our bodies. And now if you're stressing over, I can't afford this organic, or literally if you bought everything organic versus conventional, your grocery bill will be double. And we don't just do grocery shopping once every blue moon. We do it on a weekly basis. That's the stuff that adds up. It's not like the big expenses that we think actually impact like our budget. It's the day-to-day stuff, just like our habits, right? It's all about the day-to-day, right? So all that to say, if you're stressing like, one common barrier I feel like for a lot of people is they think eating healthy is so expensive.
Yeah.
And it's really, if you're doing it in a way that you're eating more nutrient dense meals, you're going to actually probably eat less over time. And just in general, like it's not as expensive as you think, especially if your mindset is, I have to buy everything organic. Like everything organic is going to cost you more money. Totally. And we don't want that to be a barrier, because ultimately how you care for your body on a daily basis, eating fruits and vegetables, balanced meals, whether it's organic or not, is what's actually going to help prevent you or protect you against all those pollutants that cause inflammation and that lead to disease, right?
Absolutely. And that doesn't mean you should never eat organic. Like there are a lot of ethical reasons that I see people switch to organic. There are a lot of personal reasons. It's nothing against organic farming. Correct. I love to shop at the farmer's market. Most of my favorite vendors are organic. So I love that. I just think we also have to be realistic about, or truthful. I think truthful is a better word for it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're eating organic because you're afraid that pesticides are affecting the bee population, hell yeah, carry on. But if you're eating organic because you feel like you're going to develop a disease if you don't, then you might have been led a little bit more out of fear than out of reality.
Right. Exactly. Oh, it's been so good. Is there anything else you want to? I'm just like, I want to make sure we get everything. Is there anything else you want to kind of talk about, or did you?
I feel like you asked the best questions. That, as you can tell, you got me on a soapbox probably 3 different times in this small podcast, which is very, I guess, easy to do for me these days. But
yeah,
I think that covers all of the basics. Maybe the one thing I want to just kind of end on is different things work for different people, and different things work at different points in your journey. So if you feel like, if you hear the word functional and that instantly excites some type of marketing fire in your belly, like you think all of a sudden you need functional, I want you just to remind yourself there are so much other things that you can do. Yeah. I wouldn't be a part of the 6-month food freedom program if I thought that every single person in the world needed and had to have functional nutrition all of the time. I think that we see so much value in the nutrition foundations. The things that Tony talks about and teaches and preaches on a regular basis are so important. And so I would never want you to hear a podcast like this one and feel like you aren't doing enough.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. And I think that's why I'm so happy to have you on the Tips with Tony team, because there are also times where sometimes it feels like we've done all we can in the foundational component, in the healing their relationship with food, managing the stress, yet something still's off. And that's where we probably do need to take a closer look at what's going on in the gut and, testing hormones and everything that it will make, it's like there's improvement, but we could be even more improvement, and that's okay. But it's all about working with the person and what they're ready for and where they're at. And it's just such a great place to have like someone I can collaborate with that has this knowledge in this other area. So also too, we can bounce ideas off each other and get clarity, because we both want the same thing. That's why I'm just so excited, because Tips with Tony is going to keep growing, and we're going to grab more IRDs, and everyone that's part of this team are people like exactly what Kasey said in the beginning. We got into this to help people. Right. We got into this because we want people to live healthier and happier lives. More importantly, on the happier. The happier is a result of taking care of your health, right? Because we just want people to just be themselves, the best versions of themselves, so that way this world can be a better place. And it's just so much bigger than just like, what do I eat?
Why not? You nailed it. And I think the foundation, oh gosh, this will be the last thing I say, but the foundations too are so important, because you guys, taking a functional approach is nothing if you don't know how to listen to your body. Right. And newsflash, if you've been dieting for any amount of time, you're probably a little confused about how to do that. And what is the 6-month Food Freedom Program all about? Listening to your body. And so learn those foundations and value them. And even though they're frustrating as heck, I know Tony and I have been through it. We see our clients go through it all the time. Yeah. It's a hard journey, but it is such a valuable one.
Amazing. So true. So now since you brought it up, I have to do a shameless plug. If you're looking to heal your relationship with food, find balance in your eating habits, and work with one of the dietitians on my team for over a 6-month period, go to tipswithtony.com/coaching, watch the video about the program, and get your applications in. If you have questions about functional nutrition, you can message Kasey. So Kasey, where can people find you if they want to connect with you? Just to ask a couple questions. Maybe they're not sure if they want to do the 6-month of freedom program. Maybe they're not sure if they need what we provide at Tips with Tony versus functional nutrition. How can they get their questions answered by contacting you?
So you can contact me on Instagram at kb.rd.nutrition. So that's KB as in Kasey Benavides and RD as in registered dietitian. Never again will I choose an Instagram handle with all rhyming letters.
But why? That's perfect.
I know it works, but it's just hard if you can't see it. You got to
no, I love it. That's so awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much for being here, Kasey. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love having you on the team. You're a superstar. You're a rock star. The feedback from clients consistently is just like, people are getting more than they even thought they would sign up for. So I just appreciate you for extending that, as I'm starting to miss coaching so much. So I'm so grateful that at least I know these clients are like thriving and getting what they signed for. So I'm so excited. Thank you again for being here. Thank you guys for listening. If you're new to the Tips with Tony podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. And when you're subscribed, you don't miss a beat. All right, that's it from us today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.